Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, the 11th of January. Welcome back from your holiday break. We hope you had an enjoyable season. And Charles today is going to be talking about the new hire wizard and how to add a new employee because people are hiring people again. So we're very, very happy to hear about that. Thank you so much for joining us. And Charles, take it away.
Thank you, Saundra. So yes, this is going to be about the new employee hire wizard. And there's two different ways to navigate to that. You're also seeing on my page the employee onboarding. That's going to be a separate video that we'll be presenting to you, and in another webinar. But for now, we're just going to look at the add employee, which you can get to with this shortcut key right here. We do have different ways of navigating. So you can use either this, where you click on it, and then you just go to the new hire wizard through here. But also, if you notice, it sits underneath employee task in the employee section. So either way, by clicking on employee up at the top and selecting employee task, or selecting the new hire from the home page, will bring you here. And here is where we have things that the different tax forms. We have W-2s, we have 1099 NEC, which stands for non-employment compensation for an independent contractor. And then we have other down here at the bottom, which is if you have a situation where there's not going to be any tax set up and you're not going to do any tax forms at the end of the year. That does mean, by the way, that we can print the 1099s for your independent contractors. We can also set it up so that they're listed in here under their business name and with their federal EIN number. So you don't have to enter a social or figure a fancy way to enter their business name with the last and first name. We can actually set it up so where it reads as their business name. Now, these two items in the middle are available in Dash. However, they are not part of payroll processing. The 1099R, the second one, is for retirement distributions. We don't do retirement distributions in payroll. The 1099M is miscellaneous income to an independent contractor that is not non-employment compensation. So it's a different thing than what you would be presenting here in payroll. Payroll is about paying people for a job performed. 1099M is not necessarily that anymore. It used to be 1099 miscellaneous. That's what it was for. It's not now that they have the NEC designation. So after going through that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the W-2 up at the top, and we'll go through that. The setup for the 1099 NEC or the other is roughly the same. The difference is the tax section doesn't really go into effect, and that you have the option of changing it to a business and then entering the business name and the tax ID. So we're going to go ahead and click on that button for W-2 and click on Add. Okay. Now, once we get here, it's going to have different sections in here. So if you notice up here at the top, we have individual and business, which is grayed out. That's because you can't select business for a W-2 employee. It would be enabled if you selected the 1099 or the other. So you would just click on the business dot right here to do so. And then the last name changes to business name, and the social security number field changes to the EIN format, which is 2 digits, a dash, and then the rest of the number. That's the difference there. So we are in here, and we would go through and type in their information. So for instance, 74, right? So we put in, this is obviously a fake social security number, and then we put in the name. And now in California, there is stipulation where for gender, they can be unspecified, non-binary, or the traditional male and female. So you can use whichever one is classified. The people, your applicant may say, I do not wish to specify my gender, in which case you can select unspecified. The birth date, you will want to put a birth date It comes into play for things like if they're doing 401k and they're over 50 and they're eligible for catch-up contributions. So that is something that you'll want to put in here. It keeps track of that. In fact, if you have any kind of 401k plan and we're keeping track of the 401k, so you do want to have that in there. So we'll go ahead and put in, say, January 1st of 2000. And then you can put in an address, 123, say Main Street. And let's say, they say that's the most popular name for cities in the United States. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I've heard. And then you also can put in things like their email address. Now, this is an option that I've added here for the purposes of discussing why you would put in the email address other than just keeping track of the information. You put in an email address, and then you can actually invite them to sign up to register for employee self-service if you have that service. And you can do that from here. So I'm going to just put in my work email. Okay. And then what do I do next? Well, I filled in this basic information. Obviously, I'm not filling in everything. I don't need to fill in a foreign address if I don't want to. Some of these items are required. And if you try to add the employee and you didn't complete it, it would just take you to the top, kind of like any place else where it's like, you need to complete this item. It'll be high, you'll have a red asterisk, that kind of thing. So, but at this point, I filled in, as far as I know, everything that's required. Okay. And then I can just scroll down, and I have these workflow buttons, one on the left, which takes me backwards, and one on the right, which takes me forward. And it will collapse this information and take me to the next section, department and employment status. So we'll expand that out, as you see right here. And then I can select the department they're in. So I'm going to put him in management. I'm going to put the hire date, say January 1st. And then I could put in other things, like I could say if I use regular, full-time, part-time, or temp, if I wanted to, and we can add other types in here if you like to have them. And this is just if you wanted to track this information, how many full-time employees you have, how many part-time, but it's not necessarily required. A rehire date, we would only be putting this in if it is a rehire. And usually when it's a rehire, they're already in the system. So you don't add them as a new employee. You can just put in a rehire date in the employee section, which we can go over in another training. We do have where you can select their workers' comp at this point. And this is another option that we can add to the system, so you can select it from the beginning. We can even make it required, so that if you're tracking workers' comp through using the workers' comp premium report in our system, so that you can report this to your provider, we can make it so that it's required to add this for new employees, so you don't miss it. That doesn't throw the report off. The next thing I'll do is I'll go to pay settings. And in here, there's this pay type. Now this pay type is here because our onboarding service is about hiring new hires. It kind of links here in this section with the wizard, but we do not use this in the wizard. We just go straight to pay details, and we would enter, say, the hourly rate, right? Or say $24 an hour, or the salary amount. We can also tell it how much that we want to automatically pay the salary each paycheck. So that way it's a less clicking that you have to do when you're doing payroll. It automatically checks it off. So we could do that if you wish. And then we can also do things that are optional again. If you wanted to track this stuff, you could do pay groups, OT exempt, all that kind of stuff right here. But the basics that I've just entered is what we need the most. And then we go to taxes. Now, in this state of California, which is where we're adding them, you can just put single, head of household, so forth, and the number of exemptions. And if you have more than one state, by entering their address, you select the state. But you can also have changes here, like say Florida, And then you'd also be able to change their unemployment state and work state if that changes. You may have somebody who lives in one state and works in another. You're right on that border, like maybe Lake Tahoe or something, where they live in Nevada and they're working in California. That would be that kind of situation. You run into those a lot when you're dealing with places like New Jersey and New York, around the borders of Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia. Happens all the time. So you may have that kind of situation. This is where you would set that up. The living address is one place, their work state is another. And in those cases, you do want to contact those states to make sure you have it set up correctly, because they're the ones that make up the rules. Now, I didn't go over the federal tax. This is basically where you would enter their information off of the new W-4 forms, the ones that ask for, of course, they always ask for marital status. Now they're asking for number of sources of income, number of dependents that you multiply by a dollar amount, and then additional things. Now here, we've combined two different steps in this one field, so where you'll be answering their marital status and the number of sources of income they have with this one field. So you have anything with a 1 is one income, and then anything with a 2 is multiple incomes. And we have it listed in the description right here to make it easy to select. So all you have to do is anything that where they marked the box on the step 2 on the W-4 is a 2. Anything where they didn't is a 1. And we just identify it in the description. And then for steps 3, 4A, 4B, and 4C, all you're going to be doing in these fields is entering the dollar amount that's listed on the W-4. If they put, like, say, for step 3, a 1 or a 2 or a 99, that's incorrect. And you need them to go back and reread the instructions and fill it out completely, because it should be a multiplier of either 2,000 or 500. Those are the figures that they use now. So you would just enter the dollar amount in this field. And if they filled out anything in steps 4A, B, or C, you would enter that as well. Now, at this point, if you had any local taxes, they would show up here. California doesn't have any local taxes. Other states do. There would be a drop down of the list, because we would be setting them up for you once we have that information. Right? If you tell us that this employee is in Pennsylvania in the Bethlehem Township in a particular county, we would get those set up, and you select them from the drop down here. Now the next piece is finish over here on the right. So I click on finish, and this is where I can confirm the information right here of what I just entered. And then on the right is where I can click an invitation to register. So I just click on this and then create employee, and it would send that registration. Now, I don't want to send myself an email because it will just clutter up my email box, but that's where we put it. And then I just click on create employee, and it creates the employee, but we're not quite done yet. As soon as it finishes with this, here's what we have. Further information that we could enter for this employee, like direct deposit. We could add a direct deposit. PTO information, we could add their PTO policy. If we have any recurring deductions like medical, dental, adding them to the 401k. So we can do that, and we can add these, and then we can continue adding employees. And that's basics of this system. The other thing that we can do is I'm going to go ahead and click on employee tasks to take us back. As I mentioned, that we can modify this wizard. So to do so, I would click on modify new employee wizard. And this is something you can do as well. You can add things to here, right? Now I want to add the home work phone and the work phone extension, and they will show up in the wizard. I can even make certain things required, where it has to be completed, or else you haven't added the employee, like the workers' compensation. So I can go down where I can find it, and you'll see all this other information. You can include it if you want to include it. It's not required. You can put in these different things, like if you wanted to put in legal rep or nickname or what have you, you can do that. Even track smoker. Some insurance companies, for the insurance plans that you have, the medical and dental, they do want to keep track of whether or not how many smokers you have, if any of them do or not. So And then we can go down here. You can also, if you happen to have certain contracts where you need to keep track of disabilities or veterans, we can add them in, and you can add that at the time of hire. And so here I see workers' comp, and I click on required. So anytime I'm adding an employee, if I don't put in that workers' comp code, then they're not added. I have to complete that. So I hit save, and then I can go back to new employee wizard. If I add somebody, well, let's go ahead and look at the 1099. Add. And this is where I can change it to business, and it changes to business name, and this follows that format of that one dash right there. And then if I go down to where they keep the workers' comp, I would be required to add something in here. And by the way, because usually 1099s don't show up on the workers' comp because they are not employees, they're independent workers, they should have their own insurance, is we can add a code that is basically for people not to be listed on the report. 1099, we usually call it. They're exempt, just like we have one for, say, owners, which are not supposed to be included. And that is everything to do with the new hire wizard.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope you found the information useful, and we are very, very pleased and thankful that you are part of our PayrollCentric family. Goodbye for now.